Yo, I'm Zach. I'm one of the owners of GPO PvP Hub, and I primarily make glad rules. I get a lot of questions like, what is there to do in our server? What are glad rules for? Why do we use them? Stuff like that. So I'm going to be answering a lot of those in this video. And so yeah, let's get to it. So firstly, what is our server? What is GPO PvP Hub? So we're a server meant for competitive GPO, where we have 4 main ways you can PvP. We have 1v1 sessions, where you can like PvP other players with glad rules, practice, get better. They're very active. They have like 10 to 15 players each, and there's pretty much one constantly. So if you just want to like PvP and GPO, this is probably the best way for you. Next we have gladiators. Gladiators are like team-based fights, and they're really fun, and we have 2 ways to play them in our server. We have house glads where you can casually glad other players for fun, and then we have like a more competitive crew glad where you can like climb the leaderboard and earn prizes, and overall it's pretty fun, and I'd recommend it to get better. And then one of the best ways to earn profit in our server is wagers. Wagers are 1v1s where you put items on the line, and we've hosted hundreds in our server. Some people have earned prizes up to like candy canes, prestiges, all-seeing eyes. It's a great way to make value and probably the best one for good players. Of course you do have to get good, which is where our 1v1 sessions and glads come in. Of course we have tournaments. There's not much to say here, everyone knows what a tournament is. We actually have a huge tournament coming up this weekend for the title of Best in A, and we have some good prizes as well. Next you may be wondering what the purpose of glad rules is, so we have 2 main things we aim for with them. We want build diversity and we want balance. So we want the game's PvP to be skilled, so we can see who the best players are, and generally it's just more fun. And then we also want build diversity so we can promote creativity and so it doesn't get stale. We can achieve build diversity by nerfing the meta, and like anything that's too good, obviously we can ban certain moves, we can ban certain kits. We have something called raw, where you can't use certain moves outside of combos, and we use that to nerf kits as well. So we can somewhat balance the game's PvP even though we aren't devs. In doing this, we've created a lot of brute diversity, a lot of weapon diversity, or at least more than I'd say there is main game. And overall, it's a much more fun environment than like Arena, where you just fight like mochi v2s, toris, and the best builds that have little counterplay. Now that I've explained why we have glad rules and what the benefits are, I want to explain every glad rule, or at least every major one. That way you can understand why we have them, because we have a reasoning for each. I'll start by going through all of them, and I'll just explain quickly, summarized what their purpose is, how they benefit us, and why they're not just there for no reason. So I'll start with general rules, and for starters we have no evasive. This rule may come as a shocker to some people, but the main reason for it is that we want to avoid complications with the evasive bar, such as starting fights at different percentages, getting percentages from other players in 1v1 sessions, stuff like that. So rather than having evasive, we decided to cap our combos at a certain damage and a certain amount of extents, which is 1. This allows us to still have a lot of survivability, functionally have an evasive, but it prevents complications, and overall it's much cleaner. Instead, we typically use evasive when someone breaks a rule and we'd like to call it out. Next we have no stalling. This is a somewhat self-explanatory one. It's normally up to a ref in a tournament or wager, but basically just delaying the fight for any reason, prolonging it. It's just not allowed. Then no wall combos. We just don't think it's fair, to be able to get a certain combo that you wouldn't have been able to get if you didn't knock them into a wall. For no kin, that's because, against kin you typically do need a kin breaker, and not all builds have a good one, and there's like varying levels of kin breakers. And so for build diversity, we've banned it, just so, more stuff is viable. No pots, that's pretty self-explanatory. And no fast mode, this one may be surprising. It's actually because fast mode increases the amount of knockback you take. So when you have it on, you can get out of certain combos, and obviously we don't want to allow that, and so it's just bans. So we have no using bans moves and no rawing. No using bans moves is fairly simple. We have a bans list and you cannot use anything under that. For rawing, it means using certain moves outside of your combo. And typically these are combo starters, like Suna R. You can't combo start with it, but you can use it to extend. This is to promote more M1 based PvP, more skill based, and again to eliminate like build gapping and to promote build diversity. No bugs is fairly simple. This includes move stacking, zero delay text, anything that's not super intended, anything that isn't a mechanic. want to avoid. And then we have no modes. No modes, it is something we're considering changing, but right now it's to avoid complications with code bar, like with evasive bar, and also to balance the mythical food. We may unban certain modes in the future, but for now they're all bans. All V2s are bans because we wanted to avoid making rules for all of them and just keep them banned, and I pulled this. However, we're considering unbanning them and just balancing them with nerfs instead, and we'll probably do that in the next rules published. So for limits and caps, we have 2500 health, 45 M1. These are balanced around each other to, make it so we can survive a fair amount of combos without needing evasive. Then we have 200k bounty max just to prevent a high bounty entry level but still give it some use. We have 700 damage per combo and 1 heal per fight. 1 heal per fight is just to prevent certain heals being too good. And then the damage max is because certain builds, even with 1 extend, can get really high damage. We want to avoid that, but we also want to allow certain builds to do more damage than others. Super build is to promote build diversity, because more builds will be viable when 3 or 4 extends isn't possible, because then the high extending fruits, the high extending weapons, they can be used together, and you can pick and choose, you can kind of craft a build. Then we have 3-second mobilities, healings, barrages, just to generally balance them. Some barrages do too much, some mobilities can be held too long and be unfair, and it's just a general rule. Next we have build specific rules. These are more niche rules dedicated to counteract metas that Glad rules create. For example, Fishman was really good in comp, so we nerfed Fishman E, so you couldn't combo start off of it without guard break, and then we made it so you couldn't use moves after Fishman up. These two indirect nerfs might change and we may switch things up, but for now this is how we've nerfed Fishman. Next we have no using moves on dazed opponents. This is to counteract the meta on certain weapons like Pitchfork and Trident, which are the best extended weapons in comp. It prevents them from being too good damage-wise and balances them overall, along with some other moves in the game. No using Roll Dash with Roku Shiki. This is because Roll Dash is generally more versatile than Soru, and we don't want it to be too good of a style, especially with how Shigon functions, so we've just banned that combination completely. No using Ito T after Ito Z. This was a true combo starter at certain health, and it was something we needed to nerf because Ito had one of the best combo starters in comp, while having a very good extend and very good mobility. So now I've covered most of the main rules and all that's left is raws and bans. We have dozens of these, so I can't really explain them all in one video. I'll explain the most controversial ones. Most of our raw moves are raw because of having low counterplay in one way or another. Of course, this varies from move to move. We've considered all of these carefully. As for our banned moves, these are generally nerfs to the kits themselves, like Trident E, Mochi Y, which I'll explain later. They're not broken moves, but the thing that they're on may need a nerf, which is the reason for most of these bans. As for the banned weapons, they're normally banned because of their M1s. For example, Kirabachi, Hollow's Halberd, Pole, Start Guns, Bear's Whip, Sunken Anchor, Yoru, and Kikoku. They all either have M1 range or stun on there. Electro is banned because of the passive, where every M1 you hit has a 50% chance of gaining being stun. This is an RNG factor we want to avoid completely, and thus both Electro and Electro V2 are bans. Free Sword style might see an unban soon, along with all V2s, but I'll have to see how that works out in the balance team. Ito R, OPR, and any other insta guard breaks we have broad. The reason for these rolls is because guard breaks are very meta currently. They're very useful and make your build a lot better. When only a few fruits have them, that shifts the meta to those fruits almost completely. So in order to stop that meta from happening, we've decided to raw those moves for build diversity. Moves aren't particularly strong themselves, but again, having that advantage just shifts those fruits to the meta, which we are trying to avoid. For Trident E ban and Rapier E ban, the reasoning for those is I just want to shape as many weapons as possible into being equally viable in the meta. Trident was very dominant, and it needed a slight nerf, but if we banned the R it would be gutted. So instead I decided to ban the E as a small nerf to the weapon, also allowing it to be in the meta. As for Rapier E, I could give a more in-depth answer, The main reason is that it had good M1s and it had a good extends, and generally it's a trade-off between one or the other, which made the weapon too good. For example, for 2 extend fruits, with our 2 extend for build cap, the viable weapons are like Candy Cane, Bicinto, Rapier with Rapier R as an ender, things like that. While for 1 extend fruits, you have that extending weapons that you need to hit the 2 extend for build cap. You have Pitchfork, you have Trident, and generally the 1 extend weapons, they have worse M1s, but better damage, and of course they can extend on 1 extend fruits, which generally have better kits in neutral. While 2 extend fruits, they generally have worse kits, but they have better M1 weapons. And so it's a trade-off really, you can choose your playstyle. And I want to keep it like that, and unbanning Rapier E counteracts that, and it would just become the best. As for raw unbanned moves like Hiei, Mochi Y, again, those moves aren't super good themselves, but with the kit they're on, they can be too meta, and so we've decided to nerf those moves to nerf the kits. Some of these may be reverted after further testing, of course, but for now, if you would like to know the reasoning for a rule in depth, you can always DM me or make a ticket in PvP Hub. All of our rules are open to change, of course, and our goal is build diversity and balance. It's pretty much most of what I have to say though. These rules may seem like a lot, but learning them is definitely worth it if you like the game. And I've been doing comp PvP for a long time, and I do enjoy it, and I think it's worth trying.